Good morning, Husker fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. We're back here on this Thursday morning. We've got some recruiting updates to talk about as Valdin Sone's decision is upcoming this week. Nebraska is doing some great work so far in the 2027 class. We want to dive in there, but also the top recruit for Nebraska in the 2026 class, the Ohio State Buckeyes, could be looking at him for a flip. So we'll get into all that. Before we do, please make sure that you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hop into the comments, let us know what you think about Valdin Sone and some of the other topics we'll be covering today. And Danny, how are you on this Thursday morning?
I'm doing well. There's, like you said, there's a lot of recruiting news. There's a lot of movings and shakings, and I think Nebraska could put themselves in a good spot for the future.
And this week is going to be interesting. Like we said, Friday is going to be finally the decision day for Valdin Sone. We got the post from Hayes Fawcett. I think that was on Wednesday. We finally got it. We had heard that he was going to be, making a decision. Brandon Collier, who's kind of his close advisor, had posted it was coming this week, but we finally got the date. We still don't, I believe, have a specific time, but he will decide. Valdin Sone, the 6'4", 320-pound defensive tackle, has moved up now, ranked 150th overall in the 24/7 Sports composite rankings after the Rivals on 3 rankings have kind of now merged into just one. So we've got the ESPN rankings, the Rivals on 3 ranking, and the 24/7 Sports rankings. So if you're looking at the composite rankings, now divided among 3 systems, 3 set of rankings, the same with the on 3 industry rankings, just to kind of set the table there for everybody. And that's why there's been a couple of updates with the composite rankings and whatnot. Danny Odom also took a pretty big leap, almost 100 spots. He's up to 143 now. But back to Valdin Sone, 150. Auburn, Clemson, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Nebraska are the 4 teams in the mix. I believe that Georgia's, started to, trend. Florida maybe still with the lead in the on-3 prediction machine. So I don't know. This one has been, as far as a big-time recruitment, he's played it pretty close to the vest. But what are your, thoughts going into decision day on Friday? Is it still, kind of a long shot for Nebraska?
I still feel like Georgia's going to get the edge here. They've really been pushing for him, even though they have some other talented players on the defensive line. And so as much as I want Nebraska to land him, I still feel like this is Georgia's recruitment to lose.
The most recent update, wow, yeah, you look at Georgia's trending heavily now at with the on-3 recruiting prediction machine. 95% chance now for Georgia. And this is picks coming in from Chad Simmons, from Brian Munson, from Steve Wiltfong, from Sean Callahan, another guy, Josh McQuiston, Corey Bender, the Florida guy, flipped his pick to Georgia. So all you guys that said Florida was coming up here, it doesn't look like it's going to be most likely Georgia who's going to win this recruitment. And what's interesting with Georgia is a lot of times, and I know a lot of fans, the first thing they're going to say is, oh, Nebraska didn't have enough money. They weren't willing to spend for Valdin Sone. That's just not true. That's just not correct. And if Georgia wins this commitment, it has nothing to do with them being the highest bidder. That's Florida. From all reports, Brian Munson, he posted that in the message boards. I mean, he basically, when fans were asking who's the big spender, he put a meme of a gator there. So, I mean, it was like he didn't say it, but he did say it without saying it. So, sometimes it's easy to say, oh, Nebraska wasn't willing to pay here. They weren't willing to do whatever. And that's not the case. Sometimes you look at a team like Georgia as a defensive lineman, and why wouldn't you want to go there? I mean, they've just turned out so many first-round picks. So this is one where I think Nebraska's done a good job. And, it's also, all signs are showing that Nebraska's not going to give up. Just because even if Valdin Sone does commit to Georgia on Friday, that doesn't mean Nebraska's going to quit on this recruitment. And if they start winning more games in the fall and start looking, like a college football playoff contender type of a program, I think some of these recruitments that didn't go their way, they might, circle back around to this fall.
Yeah, and I think like you kind of just alluded to, this fall is very important for the future of recruiting. And when you look at how this roster is constructed right now, and specifically the defensive line with the newcomers on it, it gives new defensive line coach Terry Braden a chance to really put his stamp on this line itself. So I think relating to the defensive line, at least, this will be a good first couple months to show to show, what Terry Braden can do on the defensive line. And then just as it relates to winning, I think, with this schedule, they have a chance to do that, and they have a chance to do it early. So I do think this offers a unique opportunity. I mean, it's hard to kind of predict where Nebraska will be at right now, but I honestly think that, by October, recruits and fans and, those that need to be in the know will know where Nebraska stands.
Yeah, and so in terms of Valdin Sone, if he does pick Georgia, this is one where like Tim Verges and some others have reported, Tim Verges of Rival, that Nebraska will still continue to push for him and try to get him on campus for a game this fall. And I don't think he's the only. They also have some other guys like Cameron Wilson, Tadarius Hughes, Jordan Campbell from Miami. All those guys are trying to get on campus, as well as some others. So I know that Nebraska fans, we're kind of disappointed about this 2026 class so far, but as long as the winning happens this fall, I definitely think we're going to feel better about it. Come December and early signing day than we do right now. That's my prediction.
And you look at the schedule and it can happen. And also, I mean, just take a look at Georgia's draft history and what they've been like. The Philadelphia Eagles, for example, are like the Georgia Bulldogs 2.0. So, I mean, it's hard to say no to Georgia in terms of recruiting. And, I think playing in the SEC also offers a unique opportunity. I think the Big Ten is, getting to be on par recently with the SEC, but there's always that draw as well.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the NFL development. I think that's why Georgia is winning this battle over Florida. I mean, if it was just a money issue, I think it would be Nebraska or Florida. So, the people that say Nebraska doesn't have the money to win some of these recruitments, like, I just don't think that that's correct. And one example of that, let's switch gears here, is with Danny Odom. Looking back at the recruitment of Danny Odom, the cornerback out of Florida, who Nebraska picked up, shortly after CJ Brona decommitted and went to Florida. And he's now bumped up to 143 in the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. So he's Nebraska's highest rated recruit in this class. And they got him by, basically outpaying Ohio State. According to Greg Smith of Rivals, they put in an NIL offer that Ohio State wasn't willing to match. But Greg Smith now is just throwing it out there that maybe Ohio State's going to make another run at Danny Odom. They had just had one of their 4-star defensive backs flip to North Carolina. So that's possible. I mean, it could be Danny Odom or a few other targets. He wouldn't be the only one, but he was listed there. So I don't know if Ohio State does decide to make a run at Danny Odom. Do you think Nebraska, can hold off Ohio State again, or should there be some concern among Nebraska fans that they're going to have to defend the commitment of Danny Odom here until December and try to defend it very hard to hold on to it?
I think they're going to have to try to defend it very hard, and they're going to have to try to defend it until December, because even when Danny Odom was deciding in June, Ohio State was still making a push. So, I was definitely happy when Danny Odom committed, but I think this recruitment is far from over.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. You look at where he's ranked. 24/7 now has Danny Odom, who's 6'2", 180, has him 73rd overall as the number 8 cornerback in the composite rankings. He's 14th, 143 overall. So, really making a big push up there. Addison Williams did a great job, recruiting him. Obviously, I think Phil Simpson's probably played a role too with these Florida guys. But yeah, I mean, you look at his recruitment, it was a who's who, Ohio State, Penn State, Oklahoma. I mean, everybody basically offered this kid, Florida, Georgia. I mean, just any big time program, Miami. I mean, North Carolina, Tennessee, like just all the, it was a who's who of prospects. And, we'll see. I think one thing about Ohio State is it does seem like they have less NIL funds, but I mean, they still have a great class. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there.
And they have the name brand and recent success. So
yeah, that's all the
winning team.
Yeah, all that stuff worries me, and I would just say I like this class could be better, but I mean I'll feel a lot worse about it if Nebraska loses like Danny Odom and Claude Mpuma. Those are the two guys I feel really good about in this class right now. Two guys, not immediate contributors, but I would say guys that Danny Odom, I think, could be an immediate contributor. And Puma, I think, is more of a project, but I think he's a 2 or 3 year starter. I think you get him there. maybe redshirt him for a year, and then boom, he's potential, early round draft pick in a few years. So I mean, keeping those two guys, I think, is probably the priority. Danny Odom, I think, is a little more. Probably teams are going to be coming after him a little bit. I think all the big programs seem to kind of have their offensive tackles locked up, except Texas is kind of searching around, but I don't know that they're really that. They haven't been involved with them Puma at all, so I wouldn't worry about them. But yeah, Danny Odom, definitely worried about that flip a little bit. When I read that article from Greg Smith, I was like, oosh, and he kind of made the point, like, can Nebraska hold off Ohio State twice? And that's kind of a big ask, so we'll see.
And I would be a little less worried about Claude and Puma only because he has the Illinois connections with Trey Taylor, and I think Taylor did play a part in landing him. Odom, I don't think Nebraska could hold off Ohio State twice, especially when you consider, like we just said, the recent program success and NFL development. So, and this just highlights, that Nebraska needs to start doing a better job of putting players in the NFL, but that's another conversation for another day.
I mean, yeah, that's the next thing that needs to happen. Not only putting players into the NFL, but winning consistently. I mean, we've got some followers, probably on Facebook. I'm sure you have some of the same ones, but have, kind of made it a point that, Nebraska will never sign a top 10 class recruiting wise again. And I just don't think that that's accurate, because I mean, 2 years ago, or in the 2025 class, they were 18th, and that was coming off a 6-6 season. You know what I mean? So it's like, I just don't believe that Nebraska can't put a top 10 recruiting class together. Now, I realize they're never going to recruit like Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, and like nobody else does. I mean, you want to look at, USC's done it this year, and they had the chance because, there's so many great players in their own backyard. And maybe like Florida or Miami or some of these schools, just because of that geography, Nebraska's going to have a tough time getting there. But there's no reason Nebraska can't be consistently, in my mind, 10 to 15, and I think guys like Danny Odom, show why. And it's to me, it's not a fact that Nebraska doesn't have the NIL money or whatever. Like, recruiting is still down to a lot of it. Who's going to help me get to the NFL? Who's going to help me get to the playoff? I mean, if I'm sitting here looking at all these, if Florida's offering me 1.3 million and Nebraska's offering me $1 million and Georgia's offering me 800,000, like, okay, yes, that is a difference, but what's going to be a bigger difference, right? Like that first round paycheck, that's life-changing money.
So Georgia.
Exactly. Because I mean, now just this is totally hypothetical, but is 1.5 million, say, over 800,000? Like, is that $700,000 when you consider taxes in it? Like, is that life-changing money? I mean, it already is, right? Like, if $1 million is, yeah, but like, so would the 800,000 that Georgia's going to offer you, like, that's already life-changing money. And then you can take that and then also try to develop yourself into, getting a $20 million contract in 3-4 years. So that, I think, is something that, Nebraska needs to start getting more guys to the NFL so they can make that pitch, because I think that's going to be a really good pitch to make. You got Matt Rhule here, you got a great developmental program, you got a great strength program, you've got all the things that you could want. It's a pro football factory. They just need the coaching, and I think they have it. And then once they start getting those draft results, they start winning on the field. This is going to turn into a recruiting, I'm going to say, a factory. And I'm not going to say they're going to be turning out, classes like Georgia and Alabama, but this program can absolutely recruit in a similar way to, Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame. I 100% believe that.
And I think when you look at what they did this summer, even by hosting the Battle of the Boneyard, I think that was pretty telling that Nebraska, kind of wants to be able to be like a satellite program to host camps and bring recruits in and get more exposure for the program.
Yeah, and so that'll be our final topic. And I think that they have, with the 2027 class, they have got it off to a good start. And part of the reason is that Battle of the Boneyard. They've also got Trey Taylor, and he's the example I point to all the time. It's like, if you can get a top 50 quarterback that had offers from everybody, you can win just about any recruitment. If you can get Dylan Raiola, and I understand that Dylan Raiola had ties to Nebraska, so that doesn't count quite as much. That's why I've always thought Trey Taylor was a much more impressive recruiting win, because there were no ties to Matt Rhule or Nebraska. They just went into Chicago, and they got a dude that LSU wanted, that Michigan wanted, that Illinois wanted, that Texas A&M wanted, that a bunch of teams wanted, and they got him. And so don't tell me that Nebraska can't compete with these big programs. And I just don't believe that, because of got, Trey Taylor. I mean, like, they've beaten Georgia for Carter Nelson. Like, they can win these recruitments, but it's going to help if they start winning on the field. It's going to make it's going to make that selling job a lot easier if they, have 5 NFL draft picks every year and things like that. But I guess speaking of, big time players in their own backyard in the 2027 class, though, Tory Pittman definitely is one of them. And, we've mentioned him before as, kind of a must get in this 2027 class as an in-state recruit, but he's ranked really high in the top 30, basically in the 5-star range. Nebraska, according to Tim Verges and others, is the leader right now, but LSU and some other programs are, going to be making a strong push. I know you're a little bit pessimistic about the Huskers' hopes of keeping him home, but how important is this recruitment, do you think, in kind of setting the tone for that 2027 class beyond Trey Taylor?
I think it's definitely important. I think he's a fantastic player. He's very physical safety, ball hawking safety, and so I do think he is a good player, and he would be a nice land for sure. I think there's going to be a lot more programs coming after him, and I do think it's going to be hard to keep him. I don't think he's a must land, but I do think he would be a great get. There's a lot of talented 2027 prospects, so I do think even if Pittman, even if we don't land Pittman, there are still other guys we can go and get, but he would be a solid addition, and I probably would say the highest rated commit of the class, although I'm not exactly sure where Trey Taylor stands numerically.
He would be, let's check. Trey's pretty high. And I'm going to go off the 24/7. I like the composite rankings. That's just my, kind of my personal preference, but so Trey's 53rd in the composite rankings right now. Tory Pittman, I believe, is higher than that, but 28th. So, and they've got him as a 4-star, but I mean, he's in the 5-star range. I don't know why they do that. The rankings are so weird. They're like, you're 28th and we'll make you a 5-star like before the season starts. But right now, I don't know. It's just weird how they do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're going into your senior season, you're ranked 28th, you're a 5-star. But if it's your sophomore season, you're a 4-star. So So Tory Pittman is definitely trending to be a 5-star. And I can't remember when's the last time Nebraska had a 5-star recruit in the state. I don't know. I haven't been maybe following it that long. I can't remember them having a 5-star. I mean, I know. Let's see. To try to find it, but yeah. So either way, I do think this is a recruit that Nebraska, needs to get. We talk about it all the time how some of these other programs have, the big advantages, geography wise. And so when you get a kid that's this good, you really have to try to get him. They did it with Carter Nelson. They've done it with a lot of the other, the guys they've prioritized. So I still think it's going to be
Steinkühler in 08.
Baker Steinkühler. Okay. And, yeah, he was a pretty solid player. I'm not sure that he really lived up to the hype though, but
no, but he was a solid player, I thought.
So Tory Pittman, one of the other guys, mentioned as somebody that is going to be visiting Kennedy Brown, who's the number 2 offensive tackle in the class. It was reported by, I can't remember. I know it was by Rivals. I don't remember the exact reporter, but he's going to be visiting Nebraska for a game this fall. He'll be visiting, a few other schools too, but that will be his second visit. Also visited this spring, this summer. So, that's a positive step. They've got Mark Matthews, the other elite offensive tackles, also been on campus. So they're really doing some nice work in 2027 with some of these big time recruits. Another one, Albert Simeon, a 4-star guy ranked in the top 300 out of Louisiana. He's visited Nebraska twice. So you look at their, just a lot of the talking points of, hey, Nebraska needs to get in with a lot of these bigger, like higher ranked players. Well, they're definitely doing that in the 2027 class. So, as long as they, are winning games and you got Trey Taylor, I think that, this is the class that can really help, set the foundation for, what's hopefully, a run of like consistent playoff contention. Because I think that's what Nebraska should be a consistent playoff contender, a consistent top 25 team, and a team that, could someday make a run at a national championship if all the dominoes, aligned perfectly.
Yeah, I agree. And, I've always said that I'm watching more for the 2027 class than the 2026 class, and I do think landing Trey Taylor helps kind of build the groundwork for 2027. And when you bring in a guy that's a highly regarded, nationally highly regarded, within his own state, you can kind of build around him. And they're starting to build around him, and recruits are paying attention. They're paying attention, and I think that's definitely going to be important for Nebraska moving forward, as especially if they start to win more games in the fall.
That's the point, and the fall will be here soon. What, 43 days away, I believe, until the season opener against Cincinnati. So
Let's see. Yeah, I think it's 43.
so
Wow,
uh,
only
we'll
43. Wow.
we'll be cranking up some of our preseason content here as well, along with our recruiting stuff. So please make sure that you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hop into the comment section to tell us, what you think about the 2027 class, Valdin Sone, the potential flip of Danny Odom. We'd love to hear from you guys. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. As always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.